In the quiet hours before dawn, on a fog-covered British coastline, a secret war was taking shape. A war unlike any fought before. Not with tanks rolling forward or soldiers storming trenches, but with whispers in shadowed rooms, invisible radio signals beating through the air, and armies that existed only on paper. The fate of the largest invasion force in human history would hinge on an idea so bold, so outrageous, that it seemed almost impossible. And yet, it worked. This is the story of Operation Fortitude, the deception so brilliant that it fooled an entire empire, protected the men storming the beaches of Normandy, and ultimately helped turn the tide of World War II. To understand fortitude, you must first understand the stakes. By 1944, Adolf Hitler's regime was being squeezed from every direction. The Soviet Union was pushing from the east. The Allies were bombing German cities relentlessly. Resistance groups were rising across Europe. But even as the Nazi war machine faltered, it remained deadly, especially along the Atlantic Wall, the massive network of coastal defenses stretching thousands of miles from Norway to France. And inside the German High Command, one truth was certain: the Allies would invade Western Europe. They had to, but where? Hitler demanded an answer. His generals studied maps. They analyzed shipping routes, weather patterns, flight ranges, tides, and geography. And time after time, they returned to the same conclusion. The Pas de Calais, the narrowest distance between Britain and France. The easiest route for landing craft, the most direct path to Germany's industrial heartland, the shortest supply lines. To the Germans, it was obvious. So obvious that they fortified Calais heavily, pouring concrete into bunkers, positioning artillery, and stationing their fiercest armored divisions nearby. What the Germans didn't know was that the Allies understood this perfectly and intended to exploit it. Fortitude would not just nudge the Germans toward the wrong conclusion. It would cement it so deeply that even the violent shock of D-Day itself could not shake their belief. The idea was simple. Make Germany believe that the massive invasion force gathering in southern England was aimed at Calais, not Normandy. But the execution would require a symphony of illusions, coordinated across intelligence networks, fake armies, double agents, false radio traffic, and staged physical evidence visible from the sky. At the center of this deception stood a man the Germans feared above all Allied commanders, General George S. Patton. Patton was bold, aggressive, and notorious for pushing his men relentlessly. He had a reputation for brilliance and for recklessness. To the Germans, he was the only Allied general capable of launching the decisive blow. His name alone carried weight. And so, when the Allies placed him in command of a fictional force, the 1st United States Army Group, or FUSAG, the deception gained instant credibility. It was a stroke of genius. But how do you create an entire army from nothing? How do you fool a military machine that analyzes every detail, cross-checks reports, and spies from the air? The Allies turned to creativity. In open fields scattered across southeast England, soldiers inflated rubber tanks, hundreds of them, until they looked like massive armored formations ready to roll toward the coast. Painted canvas trucks were positioned in rows. Wooden aircraft, carefully crafted with the right proportions and shadows, sat on fake airstrips. Bulldozer crews carved tire tracks and tank treads into the earth. Fake supply depots sprang up filled with empty barrels and crates that looked solid from above. Drivers moved jeeps in predictable patterns, leaving behind the impression of bustling military activity. Engineers built fake landing craft, plywood cutouts lined up along riverbanks. And in some cases, the Allies went even further. Soldiers hung laundry from fake barracks to make the camps look lived in. They lit campfires. They erected signposts and bulletin boards, everything that would suggest a real functioning military presence. But deception on the ground was only the first layer. To truly fool German intelligence, the Allied deception units built an entire radio network. Dozens of operators spent hours sending messages. Not real orders, but carefully scripted transmissions that simulated a massive army communicating across units. Each operator had a unique rhythm, a distinct hand when tapping Morse code. German intelligence had long believed they could track Allied formations by identifying these signatures. Now those signatures were delivering false reports, fake orders, fake supply requests, fake division movements, and the Germans swallowed it whole. But even this was not enough. The Allies needed human intelligence, spies, to confirm the illusion. That's where the greatest double agent of the war came in. Juan Pujol Garcia, better known by his codename Garbo, was a Spanish double agent who had gained the complete trust of German intelligence. Garbo fabricated an entire network of fictional sub-agents, each with their own personality, background, and access. He wrote reports so detailed that German analysts considered him one of their most valuable assets. His invented informants traveled across Britain, only on paper, of course, sending back updates on troop movements and preparations. Every message he sent was a brushstroke in the masterpiece, and when D-Day finally dawned, Garbo delivered his most crucial deception of all. He told the Germans that the Normandy landings were only the first wave, a diversion, a trap, and that the real invasion, led by Patton, was still coming to Calais. This message sealed the fate of the German response. Even as Allied troops fought through machine gun fire, scaled cliffs, and stormed fortifications on Normandy's beaches. Even as American Rangers captured Pointe du Hoc. Even as British and Canadian units pushed inland. Germany refused to move its armored reserves. Hitler waited. He believed Patton would strike any day. That the Normandy landings were too obvious, too risky, too exposed. That the real hammer blow was coming. The German 15th Army remained locked in defensive positions around Calais because of a fake army commanded by a general who wasn't even near the invasion, equipped with tanks made of rubber and guns made of wood. The consequences were enormous. For days, German tanks sat idle while Allied forces secured their beachheads. As the Allies pushed further, Germany's most elite armored divisions were still waiting for Patton. Even weeks after D-Day, German leaders clung to the belief that Normandy was a distraction. Months passed before they accepted the truth. In those precious early days, when the invasion could have been pushed back into the sea, Fortitude ensured that German reinforcements were delayed, scattered, and confused. That hesitation gave the Allies the time they needed to establish themselves, to bring in reinforcements, to push through hedgerows and farmland, to liberate towns and cities, and eventually break out from Normandy entirely. D-Day was the largest seaborne invasion in human history, but without Fortitude, it could have become the largest defeat. Standing on the bluffs above the beaches today, it is easy to imagine the roar of the surf, the cry of gulls, the distant echo of artillery, but hidden behind that memory is another battlefield, silent and unseen, where deception was the ultimate weapon. Think about the stakes. A single German spy noticing that a tank was made of rubber, a reconnaissance photo capturing the same vehicle in two places at once, a double agent hesitating or making a mistake. A single cracked detail could have exposed the entire operation. Yet, everything held. The illusions were perfect. The timing immaculate. Every layer of trickery supported the next. Fake armies were confirmed by fake radio messages. Fake radio messages were validated by double agents. Double agents were backed by physical evidence printed on reconnaissance photos. Hitler and his generals were trapped inside a web of illusions that grew stronger every time they examined it. They believed what they expected to believe, and the Allies gave them exactly that. Looking back, it almost seems unbelievable. The German war machine, obsessive, methodical, relentless, fooled by inflatable tanks and wooden planes, by actors, by carefully crafted lies, by storytellers playing the roles of soldiers. But this was not amateur theater. This was deception turned into a science. The Allies employed artists, set designers, engineers, codebreakers, psychologists, anyone who could help create a believable illusion. Their mission was not just to mislead, but to control the enemy's imagination, to guide it, to sculpt it. Operation Fortitude was not simply a plan, it was a performance, staged on a continental scale. In the end, the real soldiers, the men who stormed Omaha, Utah, Gold, Juneau, and Sword, earned their victory with sweat, sacrifice, and staggering bravery. But walking beside them, unseen and unheard, was another army. An army of shadows. An army of ghosts. An army that never existed, yet changed the course of history. Imagine being a German officer staring at reconnaissance photographs, seeing neat rows of tanks and aircraft and supply depots, not knowing they were illusions. Imagine intercepting radio messages from divisions that didn't exist. Imagine trusting a spy who was inventing his reports as he typed them. Imagine believing, day after day, that a legendary general was preparing to crash into your defenses when in reality he was dozens of miles away, waiting for the real invasion to begin. Operation Fortitude wasn't designed to win battles directly. It was designed to shape them. It bought time. It shaped expectations. It forced Germany to defend the wrong place, at the wrong time, with the wrong forces. And for the soldiers on the beaches, terrified, seasick, stumbling through cold waves under machine gun fire, that time was everything. Those minutes and hours determined who lived, who died, and who would go on to liberate a continent. The greatest deception in military history was not a single trick. It was thousands of small lies, woven so tightly together that they became a truth, at least to the people who needed to believe it. And that belief changed the world. Today, the story of Operation Fortitude is a reminder of something profoundly human, that wars are not won solely by strength, or firepower, or numbers. They are won by imagination, intelligence, and the ability to understand how people think. Sometimes the most powerful weapon is the one the enemy doesn't even realize is being used against them. The tanks of Fusag never rolled into battle. The soldiers of Patton's Phantom divisions never fired a shot. The wooden planes never took off. The fake landing craft never touched water. And yet, they saved more lives than we will ever know. They protected the men who stormed the beaches. They helped crack open a fortress Europe had spent years building. They paved the way for victory. Operation Fortitude was the silent guardian of D-Day, the invisible shield that stood between the Allies and disaster. And in the end, it stands as one of the most remarkable achievements in the history of warfare, an entire army that existed only in the minds of its enemies, yet changed the course of history forever.